The question now echoing across diplomatic corridors and military command centers is as stark as it is unsettling. Is Washington's sudden push for diplomacy truly about peace, or is it about limits? For weeks, the conflict has been framed as a contest of strategy, deterrence, and escalation. But behind the headlines and battlefield updates, a quieter, more consequential reality may be emerging. One defined not by ambition, but by exhaustion. And not just political exhaustion, industrial exhaustion. At the heart of this shift lies a growing concern that the war may be approaching a hard ceiling, not in territory, not in willpower, but in something far more tangible: weapons, missiles, interceptors, precision munitions, stockpiles. In recent days, analysts have begun to ask whether the pace of operations, intense, relentless, and technologically sophisticated, can actually be sustained. What was once seen as a demonstration of overwhelming capability is now raising a different question: how long can this continue? A detailed assessment by the Royal United Services Institute has added urgency to that debate. Its findings suggest that Israel's most advanced missile defense system, the Arrow 3 interceptor, could be nearing a critical point. According to the report, Israel may be just days away from exhausting its supply of these long-range interceptors if current operational tempo continues. This is not a minor detail. Arrow 3 sits at the very top of Israel's multi-layered defense architecture, designed to intercept ballistic missiles outside the Earth's atmosphere. Without it, the entire defensive equation changes. The concern does not stop with Israel. The same report warns that the United States, deeply involved in supporting regional defense operations, may also be facing mounting pressure on its own interceptor reserves, particularly the THAAD system. At current usage rates, U.S. stocks of these high-end interceptors could be depleted within weeks. This reflects a fundamental reality of modern warfare. Advanced weapons are not just expensive, they are slow to produce, complex to assemble, and dependent on fragile global supply chains. The scale of consumption in this conflict is staggering. In just 16 days of fighting, coalition forces are estimated to have fired more than 11,000 precision munitions at a cost of roughly $26 billion. That figure alone forces a reassessment of what sustainable warfare actually means in the 21st century. Early war simulations had already hinted at this vulnerability. According to the same assessment, Israel expended more than half of its Arrow interceptor stockpile within the first 96 hours of intense combat. 4 days, half the inventory. The pace of incoming threats has only compounded the problem. Since the conflict escalated in late February, Iranian attacks have reportedly averaged dozens of ballistic missiles and nearly 100 drones per day. Each incoming threat often requires multiple interceptors to ensure a successful interception, especially when radar systems are degraded. This creates a vicious cycle. More incoming threats lead to more defensive launches, which accelerate depletion, increasing vulnerability. The situation has exposed what analysts describe as a central paradox of modern missile defense. Success is expensive. Every intercepted missile represents a victory, but also a cost that accumulates rapidly. Manufacturing cannot keep pace. At pre-war production rates, replacing Israel's Arrow interceptor stockpile could take more than 30 months. These systems rely on highly specialized components and complex international supply chains that cannot be scaled quickly. As one assessment put it, the conflict is entering what experts call a magazine abyss, where high-end munitions are consumed faster than they can be replaced. This is where the narrative begins to shift. Because when replenishment timelines stretch into years, the meaning of sustainability changes entirely. Wars are no longer just fought on battlefields, they are fought in factories. Against this backdrop, Washington's recent diplomatic signals are being re-examined. In recent statements, Donald Trump has indicated openness to negotiations with Iran. Analysts are now asking whether this shift reflects strategy or constraint. The Rusai assessment suggests that interceptor depletion may indeed be influencing political decision-making, noting that such shortages could explain moves toward winding down the conflict. However, this interpretation is contested. Israeli officials have firmly rejected claims of an immediate shortage. A military source stated, as of now, there is no interceptor shortage. The Israeli army is prepared for prolonged combat. We are continuously monitoring the situation. Publicly, the message remains one of readiness. Privately, however, the pressures are harder to ignore. Even with interception success rates exceeding 90%, some missiles have penetrated defenses, causing casualties and damage. This highlights a key limitation. No defense system is perfect, especially under sustained saturation attacks. Drones add another layer of complexity. They are cheaper, easier to mass produce, and can overwhelm defenses, forcing the use of expensive interceptors. This creates an asymmetry, low-cost threats forcing high-cost responses that becomes increasingly unsustainable over time. The concept emerging from this conflict is what analysts call command of the reload. Victory is no longer determined solely by who strikes harder, but by who can sustain operations, who can replenish, who can endure. For the United States, the implications extend beyond this conflict. Missile defense systems like the THAAD are part of a global network. Depletion in one region could create vulnerabilities elsewhere. For Israel, the stakes are immediate. Its layered defense depends on maintaining multiple tiers of protection. If one layer weakens, the entire system becomes more exposed. And risk in this context is not abstract. It translates into damage to infrastructure, threats to civilian populations, and increased political pressure. As the conflict continues, one reality is becoming increasingly clear. This is not just a war of missiles and counter missiles. It is a war of production lines, supply chains, stockpiles. The numbers tell the story. Thousands of munitions fired, billions of dollars spent, years required to rebuild. And behind those numbers lies a fundamental constraint. Modern warfare is faster than modern manufacturing. This mismatch is forcing a reassessment of strategy at the highest levels. If the pace of conflict cannot be sustained indefinitely, then the timeline of war itself becomes a variable, not just when to escalate, but when to stop. This is where diplomacy re-enters the equation, not as an abstract ideal, but as a practical necessity. The signals coming from Washington may reflect a recognition that even the most advanced military capabilities have limits. Whether those signals translate into meaningful negotiations remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that the conversation has changed. The war is no longer being measured solely in battlefield outcomes. It is being measured in burn rates, in depletion curves, in production timelines, and perhaps most importantly, in time. Time to sustain, time to replenish, time to decide. Because in the end, the defining question may not be